ethos that I work for or strive for every day. What we're going to talk about, the immunity charm, has the ability to do that. Not just anywhere, but across the world. Such a simple, novel concept that has the ability to galvanize saving children's lives across developing and underdeveloped world. So without stealing your thunder, I'd like to play this video for you.
The immunization history of a child. It's what doctors the world over refer to and check which vaccine is due. But this is Afghanistan, a land with the world's worst infant mortality rate, where traditional biases and remote areas mean doctors have to work without proper immunization history.
We are facing a lot of challenges due to high level of illiteracy and different traditional beliefs in the community.
To counter Afghanistan's traditional bias against immunization, we turn to another tradition. This little bracelet is a common sight in Afghanistan, a lucky charm that protects Afghan newborns from evil forces. Today, this bracelet protects from much more. This is the immunity charm, a simple thread with colored beads that are messages from doctors to each other and to the people of Afghanistan. Each colored bead is code for a specific vaccine. With every vaccination, doctors add the corresponding bead to the bracelet, a reminder of a baby's immunization history worn by the baby. Requiring just 1 hour training programs, the immunity charm has excited the healthcare community in Afghanistan and beyond.
I'm really excited about the immunity charm because it turns culture into incentive and a bracelet into long lineups of mothers and children at vaccine clinics.
On one side, this is in line with the traditional beliefs of the community. On the other side, that will remind the healthcare provider which vaccines are implemented.
On seeing the pilot's success, the government will be extending the immunity charm to other provinces, helping thousands of infants complete their vaccination schedules. The Afghan immunity charm, making immunization into a tradition.
Isn't it just amazing? Such a simple concept, but so powerful. So I would like to welcome on stage Dr. Harshit Jain. He's the Vice President of McCann Health, and he's a Marketing Director, Asia Pacific of McCann Health, who has now moved to UK. Now, he's the man behind the idea of immunity charm and execution of this in Afghanistan. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Harshit Jain, or AJ as he likes to be called as. So the thing is that now you have achieved this, so the accolades with the immunity charm. Now you won awards across the world for the efforts and for the idea. Can you please tell us, how do you feel about it?
How do I feel? I think top of the world. It was an honor and privilege to go up on that stage, not once, but multiple times. And I think this is how I feel even now, after Cannes. But I think it is much more than the awards and recognition that this campaign has got. I think what excites me the most is about saving lives. How a simple idea is saving lives of millions of people across the globe. And I think this was one of the key reasons of my moving out of medical practice 12 years ago.
Right, so there's an interesting story now, guys. So Dr. Harshit Jain did his postgrad from Chicago, and he was a MD from there, and then he moved to advertising. Now, this is the right unique thing for a pediatrician or a medical professional like me. I cannot even envisage that. Can you please tell me a little bit more? What made you go for that?
I think it just happened. I always call it happened by chance, more of serendipity. Mm-hmm. I used to practice in US, and I realized, and pardon me for saying that if I continue to practice, my brain neurons will atrophy because I was thinking so much at a spinal level. It was so governed by protocols. I said, no, I can't practice. Let me go back to my country and try to do something which I enjoy and I can continue for the rest of my life. Being a doctor and licensed to practice in 2 countries, you always have the advantage of going back to medical practice. So I could take that chance. And then I think it started happening. I, did few startups, and then McCann Health happened a few years ago.
Well, we're not that bad. We doctors are okay. Now, can you just take us through how did you conceive this idea of immunity charm? Can you take us through this, please?
So it's a very interesting story. So it was actually not my idea. The idea came from my 8-month-old son, who was 8 months old that time. And I was having lunch with my colleague, who is a co-creator, Dr. Dan Carucci, who's based in Washington. And my son was just playing around. So Dan happened to ask me this question: what is this black thread that your son is wearing? And I was trying to explain him what that thread is and why I make him wear. And I touched upon culture, I touched upon superstition, and that kind of made me realize, oh, why am I doing this? So the practice was so prevalent that even the educated people in the community would believe in that superstition. And that kind of sounded strange to me when I was narrating the entire story to him. So we kind of kept on talking about it, discussing, and it struck us that it is such a strong belief. Can we use this strong belief to solve a big problem? There are so many problems that exist in the world. Can we marry these together and use it to an advantage? And I think after that, the series of things happened which led to immunity charm.
Well, I guess this black thread concept is quite prevalent in South Asia. So anyone in the audience who have seen this before? The black thread to ward off evil eye? Can you put your hands up if you have seen that? Oh yeah, that's good. Quite a few people have seen that. So how did this work with Afghanistan? How did this translate to going to Afghanistan and using it over there?
Yeah. So Ministry of Public Health Afghanistan used to be one of our clients at that time, and we were kind of deeply studying the healthcare infrastructure, the healthcare delivery, and the healthcare conditions for people in Afghanistan. And so it was kind of top of our mind, and Afghanistan happens, unfortunately, to have the highest infant mortality in the world. So we thought, if this idea, and we want to talk about immunization, which would be a better country to implement? And obviously it would have been the hardest country to implement also, because we were not located in that country and we had very limited network and relationships in that market.
Right, this was just an idea at that time, I guess. So how did you make it to work over there? What challenges did you have to face?
So I think the entire journey was full of challenges, and starting from identifying the right team who believes in the idea. And this is what I strongly believe, and it happened to me also. I discussed this idea with a few of the creative colleagues in my office, and they didn't get warmed up to the idea. Then I discussed it with Pratik, a guy who I would like to credit. He was the National Creative Director of McCann World Group, and he got very excited with the idea. Yes, this is the thing, and we can solve a problem. And then gradually we built a team. So from Pratik, then came Kamya on board, who said, yeah, we will do it together. And then we had good guidance provided by our chairman, Prasoon, and global creative director, Jeremy, who really helped and guided us in the entire course to address these challenges. So after the team kind of got finalized, then the biggest challenge that we encounter when the idea comes before the project is about the resources. Who funds the project? And I'm sure all of you do encounter these problems as well. But we were committed to the idea. We took the idea to senior officials at Ministry of Public Health, and they got extremely excited with the idea. But their funding usually comes from the UN agencies, and there are only limited opportunities available if the proof of concept is not ready yet. But we managed to overcome all the difficulties that we had, right from the executing the idea to actually implementing it on ground.
I guess if you have a team that works on your belief, then half the job is done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But on the other hand, so now this thread seems so simple. But did you find getting the thread to the parts of Afghanistan where you wanted them to go easy, or how was the process?
So because we're working very closely with the Ministry of Public Health, we thought, let us start with a pilot with a limited set of audience so that we can test the project early on before we scale it up to a bigger market where larger funds are required. So we identified few clinics near the Kabul district in Afghanistan where the project was implemented. About 1,000 kids were signed up in the phase 1 of the campaign. And at that time, the situation in Afghanistan was also not very pleasant because of the situations there. So the conducting training became a challenge. Such a simple thing also became a challenge at that point. So, but the ministry officials were very cooperative, and we managed to conduct the training digitally, virtually, on Skype, and we kind of got them on board. So such strange problems came to us, like when we dispatched the immunity charm from India to Afghanistan, it was caught by the customs that the beads look like bullet pellets.
Oh dear.
So they can't cross the border. So problems like these, but I think the team was committed enough to encounter those problems so that it reaches the right people.
I guess for a pediatrician, the main thing is if the beads are swallowed by a child, they can choke. So how did you go through that? What was the process involved in trying to make it safe?
Yeah. So the product designing, so for us, it was a very big project of a unique product design where initially it looked very simple to us. It is a thread with beads which exists all over, so it should be very easy to source. But when we started getting into it, we came across, okay, we need smaller beads with bigger bores which a physician can easily pass through the thread. We need beads that are not as simple as exist in the market, otherwise mothers could add the beads on their own to avoid that. If a child chews the bead, what would happen? So we had to make it hypoallergenic with the BPA-free plastic and things like that. The lock, we created a special lock which only a healthcare practitioner can open, and a child while playing should not be able to open that lock. And so it became kind of a nightmare, and we tried to source vendors in the country, and unfortunately we couldn't find one. And then we managed to find our partners in China. So we sourced the locks from China, managed to get the beads manufactured in Shanghai, and then these bracelets were created.
Wow, that's an amazing journey for such a small thread with beads, but fantastic work for that. Now, how has this been taken up in Afghanistan?
So it was, the people were extremely excited, and to our surprise, with the immunity charm, starting with the healthcare practitioners, although it added an additional layer of work for them, that now they have to, in addition to what they were doing earlier, making entries in their register, now they have to add these beads also. But they were also excited and very receptive because they saw advantage in this. And especially from parents' perspective, we had visualized that we want this bracelet to become aspirational. We want mothers to talk about this bracelet, that my kid has 3 beads. How many beads does your kid have? And we wanted those conversations to happen, and that exactly happened. And that's what made us happy and made it effective.
So it's been, I guess it's been a year now that you started this, rolled out this project. Now, how has the uptake been over there? How far is it spread, and have you got any data to show what has happened in this last year?
The first campaign that we did, I think started sometime this year, was we did a qualitative study because we didn't have enough resources that time to fund an effectiveness study. And the qualitative study showed good uptake and good acceptance from all the stakeholders, from the government to the healthcare practitioners to the parents, and also from the child. So we didn't get any false feedback about receptivity from the child. Post that, we started pitching the idea to a lot of UN agencies, and they all got very warmed up to the idea. But they wanted effectiveness data to be able to put money behind this. Then we managed to get a grant from Gates Foundation for funding the first phase of the effectiveness study a few months ago. And then we partnered with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine to create a protocol for us to conduct the effectiveness study. which would effectively be rolled out in India, in Afghanistan, and also Africa. We decided to choose Africa especially because our belief was the idea was based on a strong cultural insight which is prevalent mostly in South Asia. But when we spoke to our colleagues in Africa, they said this is a bracelet and kind of a fun and cool thing. So it should work in Africa also, even when there is no cultural belief which is there. So the India part of the study has already kicked off. We are waiting for the Afghanistan and Africa segments to be kicked off soon.
Yeah, I see teenagers wearing wristbands, multiple wristbands. I guess if people have teenagers over here, you will be able to correlate with that. Do you? Anyone else over here as teenagers who's seen wristbands on their wrists? Multiple layers of wristbands? None.
Not this generation.
I do see that in my clinic. Young people coming with multiple wristbands. So it's a cool thing. Okay. Right. Now, so this is quite lateral thinking. So when you start thinking about wristbands or fine thread and using it for the wider public, so how do you find this concept of lateral thinking in your field?
So lateral thinking is something which has always intrigued me. I believe, and this is not to be quoted, this is just my belief, that the medical curriculum, the medical training for the doctors actually forces them to think vertically. Because everything is so protocol-driven and algorithmic, our mind gets trained to think vertically in every situation, not just a professional situation, but also a personal situation. I come from a family of doctors and I see that every day. And that was one of the key reasons for me to move out of practicing medicine to do something lateral. In fact, at one point, I wanted to write a book also on lateral thinking to encourage the medical practitioners to think laterally. Let me talk about a few of the other ideas that kind of show this lateral thinking, and we believe they were simple enough to change the world. I think they have also won a lot of awards, not like Immunity Charm, but they have won a lot of awards across the award shows as well. So I'll talk about first one. We were talking about Snapchat, the millennial generation. So we use emojis in everything we do, whether it's a text message or even a work email. But when it comes to health, there were no emojis which were present. And it is said that in health, the more you share, the better you feel, not just emotionally or psychologically, but physically also. And there is a lot of scientific evidence to support that. This was one of the projects that we did in partnership with WeChat to create world's first health emojis. It was a set of 16 emojis that was created. Let's talk about general conditions like fever, pain, and few specific to women. And it became quite a sensation for WeChat users. Okay. Then we kind of submitted an application to the Unicode Consortium to make it universal, which is in process.
Well, that's great. Anything else in any medical-related field that you have done?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I would like to talk about an idea which is, again, very simple and has a potential to talk to people across the globe and very easy to implement. So in India, you see a green dot and a brown dot next to any food item on a restaurant menu or even on packaged food products. And they just tell you whether the item is a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian. For me, who is a vegetarian, this is extremely helpful to identify quickly. If I think as someone with diabetes, when he goes out to eat, he's extremely confused. What does he eat? The only thing that he remembers and identifies, I have to eat my food with less sugar. But that's not the correct way to look at food options for a person with diabetes. It has to be the right proportion and combination of carbs, proteins, and fats. So we worked with the scientific community and created this blue dot, which comes in next to the green dot and a brown dot, which helps in easy identification of foods which are good for people with diabetes. And you'll be surprised, at least 30% of the food items in a restaurant menu were diabetes friendly and no one knew about it.
Well, that's an excellent thing. I think this is a concept that can be spread all over the world, wide, not just in India, but across the globe. Diabetes is a big problem all across the globe. Right. Coming back to the immunity charm. So, how did you think you could accomplish this massive project of devising a small thread to working all across Afghanistan now, which I understand that the government of Afghanistan is trying to do? How were you able to achieve that?
I think one of the key reasons for us was our commitment to the idea. We were very tempted to integrate technology in this idea, which I think everyone is nowadays. So we thought about things like, can we add an RFID to it? Can we add NFC to it? Can we use blockchain, which is the popular thing nowadays? Can we integrate blockchain in this? Also, we went to the extent of making it like a wearable, which could track temperature, sleep patterns, and so many other parameters for the baby. But then we stepped back and thought that the beauty of this idea is in the simplicity. As we complicate it further, it would only add complexity and it would not work with the belief system of the user on which this idea is based on. So we stepped back and kept this idea close to the cultural belief. The bracelet looks exactly the way the bracelet is worn in most of the countries. The only difference is only few colored beads have been added in place of the black beads.
Right. So now, for the people around over here, what is the message for the advertising community as such in achieving sort of such big successes around the globe with such simple, novel ideas?
So, like my learning over the past few years, and I must say, this was my debut cans for the India agency, and I would have been happy if we had won even a single line. And I was reading as statistics before we entered this at Lions, was any agency takes minimum 3 years to win their first line. And we also took exactly 3 years to do that. So two key learnings from working on immunity charm and the other things is it's extremely important to have a committed team. Committed team who strongly believes in the idea. Any weak link in that, we have seen the idea is not able to reach the destination. So the immunity charm team was committed to go to any length to make the idea happen. That was first. The second big thing that I want to talk is a lot of times, especially in agencies, it is considered that we have an idea and now we'll change the world. Ideation is just 1% of the overall thing. I have seen so many ideas which were brilliant, but they could not see the light of the day, or they could not achieve what they could potentially have achieved. So